dealers, collectors, businessmen that actually never give up, camp in front of somebody's door till they can get the car, an important car.
I don't care what these guys do. Virtual reality, nothing comes close to this. It's incredible. It's unbelievable. It's the next best thing to sex.
There are cars, and there are cars. For some, go faster stripes. For the lucky few, the once-in-a-lifetime chance to drive a piece of racing history. In August 2002, the most expensive racing car ever sold at auction went under the hammer at Monterey, California.
It's $750,000 now, don't make $1 million now.
Bought for $6.5 million, the car was the Ferrari Testa Rossa that had won the 1962 Le Mans 24-hour race, one of the most grueling and dangerous events in motorsport. Its co-driver was Phil Hill, a 3-times Le Mans winner and the first American to win the Formula One championship. This high-octane mixture of the car's make, driver and racing history made it one of the most desirable cars on the planet.
Having a car that won Le Mans is the best you can have, because Le Mans is the world's most famous race. And the fact that it's Ferrari, the fact that it looks so cool, the fact that it has a V12 engine, you put all those things together and you have something that's worth $6 million.
This Testarossa is an absolutely fantastic motor car, has its own intrinsic value no matter how many owners it's had, and we will be delighted to have it for sale at any time, because it really is one of those very, very special cars.
Ferrari, like it or not, is the most collectible motor car. It's the car that speaks a universal language. Everybody loves Ferrari. The style, the speed, the mystique of Ferrari, it is the most collectible car. There are other valuable cars, but that's the one that is collected all over the world.
Such is the pulling power of Ferrari that it has an auction all to itself. Held every December in one of the most expensive hotels in the world, in one of its most glamorous resorts, the Bonham's Ferrari auction is one of the glitziest sales there is.
Here at Gstaad, what we've done by limiting the sales to Ferrari, and our team pioneered this idea of themed sales, and not only limiting it to Ferrari, but bringing it to the Palace Hotel, the most spectacular, the most grand hotel of its type in Europe, in the world indeed, and setting it at Christmas time when the snow's on the ground and the pine trees are looking at their most beautiful. That's all creating the environment where the excitement and the buzz of the sale will work to maximum effect. We're trying to get the highest possible price we can for our sellers. That's what our job is all about. So setting that scene's important. Gstaad had all the right and has all the right ingredients to bring that to the fore.
There are car auctions and there are car auctions. Here in the Gstaad Palace, the Ferraris are made to feel more at home than the guests.
Buying a classic car is not like buying a modern car and walking into a showroom. It's more of a romantic choice rather than a rational choice. It's the heart over the head. It has to be a pleasurable experience. It's not just a question of looking at a catalogue, seeing what the given market range for that model is and saying, okay, I'll have one. People come here, they look at the cars that are on offer. They may have had one car in mind and fall in love with another when they arrive here.
At Gstaad, the Ferraris are given every chance to present themselves in the best possible light and seduce a potential new owner.
It's exciting. I think it's fair to say that we all get excited about buying new toys. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all children, and what's Christmas partly all about is toys.
Well, a very warm and traditional welcome to you here at the Palace Hotel for our annual sale of Ferrari motor cars, diamond jewellery and classic.
The trade in classic cars only really got going in the 1970s. Since then, it's become big business.
Is she saying yes, sir? She's not.
Cars that were once seen as more or less scrap metal are now worth a small fortune. Millions of dollars are paid for these chariots of desire, especially if they have a history.
Magnificent machines of 100,000 francs off.
We find these days that, generally speaking, the most valuable Ferraris tend to be making their way to America. The multi-million-dollar car Ferraris tend, 8 times out of 10, to be bought at auction by Americans.
The man who paid $6.5 million for the '62 Ferrari Testa Rossa is Jim Spiro, one of America's most successful stockbrokers, and one of its biggest car nuts. He owns 4 Ferraris.
People collect cars for different reasons. Some people collect them, many people collect them because it reminds them of a period in their youth when perhaps they couldn't afford that type of car, but they remember watching them from behind the chicken wire at a racing circuit, or they were sort of their faces up against a car showroom on a winter's day wishing they could afford that car one day.
I am not like what I would call a collector. I'm what I would call a hobbyist. And I get my greatest pleasure from driving the cars. To me, that's what they were built for, but that's a whole other discussion. I'm not a big fan of looking and staring and waxing and showing and everything else, notwithstanding that turns a lot of people on, and I guess those are useful endeavors, but they don't do much for me. I'm pursuing my dream, which is to drive some cars that I dreamt of as a kid.
James Spiro. He drives it. This is what is amazing about him. Sometimes I go see him at his place of work, and he's one of the big high-rise down in the business district. And I always come in, and he has one of the reserved parking at the bottom of it, and I always see it's either an F50 or the 330 Testarossa, and it's just a fantastic sight. It's really what Ferrari is all about, you know, bringing them back to full use. He's a driver. He takes them out. Our most interesting days, most fun days really, is to take 5, 10, 15 cars and go out in southern Louisiana's highways all around. Sometimes we have a police escort when we sort of want to push them a little, without saying how much. But sometimes we push them a lot under police supervision.
This is a race car, so it's a car built for performance. There are not a lot of creature comforts. There are not a lot of compromises. It's built to go fast, and everything else be damned.
It's really one of the most exhilarating things you can imagine. You have the sensation of speed and the dancing around on the road, and then as it climbs higher, the force becomes stronger. It's pushing you back in the seat. It's unbelievable. No video game can touch it. I don't care what these guys do. Virtual reality, nothing comes close to this. It's incredible.
One of the cars at the top of my A list was a Ferrari Testa Rossa. That's the way I would phrase it. So it's unique. It's got blistering acceleration. Smells great, sounds great, feels great. But when I was dreaming as a child, I never thought it would be this car. You know. And to me, it has all of the things that made the Testa Rossa great, packed in one car.
The Ferrari Testa Rossa is one of the most admired cars in motoring history. It was built at Ferrari's Maranello factory near Modena in northern Italy. For over 50 years, the new models made here have been as breathlessly awaited as a star designer's spring collection.
people like Italian style. Italian style has a lot of flair, a lot of panache, whether it's food, whether it's music, whether it's cinema, all kinds of great Italian icons, and of course Ferrari is one of the greatest of all.
The shape of it and the detail of it, no one else did that. These guys created things that are art. The curves are feminine. You know, it's almost like God created Sophia Loren, but this one has 4 wheels.
The mystique of Ferrari was created by one man, Enzo Ferrari. Having started as a racing driver, he first designed the car that bears his name in 1946. It quickly became synonymous with quality, style, and glamour.
The genius of Enzo Ferrari was to bring together all those people that were important and necessary to create the most famous car in the world. He was obviously able to find the best engineers, the best designers, the best race drivers. I think that is the major point in Enzo Ferrari's life, and he was a genius in doing that.
I think the mythology of Ferrari is you had this one charismatic man who, interestingly enough, started the career that made him famous around the world when he was in his basically late 40s, early 50s. How many people can say that all of a sudden, bang, they became a world-renowned figure when their career started that late in life? That every single Ferrari relates to that man.
The latest thoroughbred from the Ferrari stable is named after Enzo Ferrari, who died in 1988.
The Enzo, Ferrari's newest car, I think will go down as the greatest road car ever made. And there you are, seeing them make it by hand. You see people creating something that's the ultimate, seeing the whole thing come together to make this fantastic piece of what I call living art. Because not only does it look great and it's arresting, so it's like watching that artist paint the painting. And there's no other piece of art that allows you to do that. A piece of sculpture is static. This is a piece of sculpture that allows you to get in it and go.
The shop window for sports car manufacturers is motor racing. Success on the track is vital for a car's marketability. Ferrari has an unparalleled career as a race car.
Ferrari is interesting in that it's got a fantastic racing pedigree, and that counts for a lot in terms of collectability. It's the only Formula One team that's been present in the World Championship right from the very, very start in the late 1940s. It's raced at every level. It's raced in Formula 2. It's raced at Le Mans in all the endurance races. Its racing pedigree is unequaled, and in terms of collectability, that is something which carries a great deal of weight. Ferrari has respectability in the classic car marketplace.
Most everyone wants to race for Ferrari. For Schumacher, it was bang, going to Ferrari was it. Back then, it was even more so because Ferrari was the pinnacle. That was the ultimate. He dominated endurance racing, and so you have this fantastic competition history of winning Le Mans, dominating endurance racing.
Of all the world's great endurance races, none has more prestige than the 24 hours at Le Mans.
Le Mans at night. The headlights and the tail lights, but between them the spray of the incredibly difficult conditions caused by the appalling weather.
First run in 1923 to test the reliability of the then newfangled headlights, Le Mans quickly established itself as one of the most glamorous motor races on earth, and one of the toughest.
I would say Le Mans is the greatest race, and it's a real test of man and machine. Such a huge number of spectators, a very grueling race, a very unforgiving race, and certainly in terms of car collectors, Le Mans history is the one. The really big kudos in a car's history is a Le Mans history, and particularly Le Mans winning history. It can mean a difference of 10 times the car's value. That's the sort of weight that Le Mans carries.
The $6 million Ferrari Testarossa was a winner of Le Mans in 1962. Its co-driver was Phil Hill, one of the most celebrated in racing history.
Phil Hill was one of the greatest drivers of the 50s and 60s, and certainly his name attached to the car gave it tremendous provenance. That he is one of the magical names. There was not a better driver of that period. He was the 1961 Formula One world champion, and he won Le Mans 3 times. One of the times in '62 in this car.
Born in Miami in 1927, Phil Hill reached the top of the tree in a racing career that lasted nearly 2 decades. He was a natural-born driver.
I was just an absolute car freak from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. And I was always distracted by cars. I had to, if there was anything happening, my interest was where the car was. And it could be quite ordinary, the car. Didn't have to be anything special. If it was a car and not human, I was attracted to it much more than people. I think I thought I was a car. I used to do nothing but make noises. I drove my family nuts. I'm sure that it worried them, that I was so obsessed, having to go up through the gears every time I went from one room to another, and all that. It says to Phil Hill, it says 52, 53, 54, 56, and 57. And there's Ferrari's badge on it. The fact that they are rare, that there's a limited number, that they're held in very high esteem by the motoring world, they're just fantastic. I guess the first one that I drove was one that had been involved in a fatal accident at Le Mans the year before. And the fellow's name was La Riviere. And he went off the road at Terre Rouge and was decapitated by a strand of barbed wire. And so the car was hardly damaged.
When Hill began racing there in the 50s, safety wasn't an issue at Le Mans. In 1955, 80 spectators died when a Mercedes left the track. Even after that, speed was still king. In 1962, Ferrari upgraded to a more powerful 4-litre Testarossa. When they first drove it, Hill and his co-driver thought they'd been given a car with a dodgy clutch.
Instead of rapturously embracing this marvelous car that has more power than the others, and what can we do with this sort of thing, it just seemed like, God, what did we do to be penalized, to be put in this? And we didn't give it a chance until the fact was done, until it had. I was just so convinced that the clutch was going to fail, and it never did. And as the decades roll by, it gets a better and better reputation.
The Ferrari Testarossa was the last front-engine car to win at Le Mans. '62 was Hill's final victory there, but the fame of both car and driver was secure.
He was the single most successful driver in the Testarossa, so his name attached to this car gave it tremendous provenance. People have such respect for him that it adds a personality to the car.
There was another personality involved. The '62 Ferrari Testarossa was bought by one of the most important car collectors on the motor racing scene, Pierre Bardinon. He was to own it for the next 30 years. He had the car restored to its original racing condition.
J'avais envie de cette voiture parce que c'était une voiture historique, que Le Mans en 1962 était quand même victorieuse. Dans la course automobile, il y avait Ferrari, il n'y en avait pas d'autre. Quand on aime le beau, on sait que le beau, c'est Ferrari.
Pierre Bardinon was one of the first significant collectors that even back in the 60s was recognizing the importance of Ferrari when a lot of other car collectors were collecting pre-war cars, and it was quite avant-garde for Pierre Bardinon to collect one mark in Ferrari, which were relatively modern cars back then, and old race cars. There was not a lot of use for them. Now we have the whole vintage racing scene, which is a huge part of our hobby. That didn't exist when he started collecting, so it was quite extraordinary for him to have the vision and the appreciation to collect these completely esoteric and in many ways unusable cars.
Bardinon's collection of Ferraris is housed at Mas du Clos, a chateau he owns in France. They're kept in a private museum ranged over 3 floors, into which cameras are not allowed. Bardinon has owned 4 Le Mans winning cars.
At the peak of his collection in the late 70s, I counted 62 Ferraris in his museum, which is an enormous number. And they were all competition cars, all with a racing pedigree. Now, a couple of years later, of course, he started to sell off some of them. And, of course, there were more and more people inquiring, camping in front of his door to pry a car out of his collection.
In April 2002, Bardinon decided to sell the 62 Ferrari Testarossa. He asked the help of a friend, Terry Hoyle.
Pierre called me in the middle of the year and said, "Terry, come and see me." And he said, "I would like to sell a car, this particular car. What sort of money did I think he could realize for it?" So we discussed that, and we had a game plan, and it was left to me to find the appropriate clients. Now, as I'm sure you can understand, cars at this value is not that easy to just suddenly pluck out of thin air a client with the money and the passion and the wherewithal to purchase such a car. So it's not a 5-minute job at all.
Unsurprisingly, for a collector of fast cars, Bardinon isn't a man who likes to hang around.
A major Dutch collector was there at Pierre Bardinon's place, and Mr. Bardinon mentioned the price, and the Dutch collector, who has already 35 Ferraris, I believe, competition cars, he said, "Well, let me think about it overnight." And he slept in the guest house. Next morning they met again at the breakfast table, and he said, "Okay, I take it." But Mr. Bardinon replied, "I'm sorry to say, I sold it last night at midnight. Somebody was quicker." So Mr. Bardinon, if he wants something, he wants to do it immediately. He doesn't want to wait 12 hours. He wants to do it now. Take it or leave it.
Snatched from under the Dutchman's nose, the 62 Testarossa came into the hands of RM Auctions, a big player in the American car market based in Monterey, California. The classic car network was soon buzzing.
We shipped it over from Europe, brought it here, had it mechanically checked out, photographed it, and did a video of it. But the word, as I said, was starting to spread on its own. Of course, we did a lot of our own legwork and calling and meeting with people and arranging demonstrations. But the word got out in the Ferrari world. The word was out on the internet before the car left the former owner's hands, as it were.
Such is the luster of the Bardinon imprint that it added yet more value to the car.
People do get jolly excited at the opportunity of being able to buy something that hasn't been for sale for a long, long time. And particularly what was nice is that it had been owned by the previous owner, Mr. Bardinon, for over 30 years. It came straight, fresh from the Bardinon collection, and that was very nice. And it did generate a lot of interest and excitement.
One of the highlights of the American car year is RM's annual auction at Monterey near San Francisco. This was where the 62 Le Mans winning Testarossa was to be sold.
If you're a car enthusiast, there are certain seminal events every year, one of which is Monterey. If you're an art enthusiast, I'm sure there are comparable things. Monterey, I guess, is the quintessential car event of the year. It takes place in the middle of August. I mean, it's like a candy store for car fans. And as I say, I don't remember where I got wind of it, but I knew the car was going to be up for auction. And I had planned to go anyway, but obviously now I had a level of enthusiasm that I didn't know prior to hearing about it. And, you know, you can't predict what's going to happen in an auction. You got to hope that the forces line up on your side.
One of the most admired brands in motorsport, winner of one of its greatest races, driven by one of its most famous drivers, the '62 Ferrari Testa Rossa was no ordinary runaround.
The auction took place in Monterey, California, in August. The excitement building up to the sale was tremendous. I mean, we had the entire Ferrari world looking upon us. In fact, most of the car world was looking upon this car to see what it would do. It was the most significant and valuable car to come to auction in a number of years. So everybody was looking at us, including our competitors. And it could be called excitement or nervousness. I mean, from our point of view, from my point of view, it was exciting, of course, but it was also nerve-wracking. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. We were pursuing every lead, talking to every potential client that we thought had serious interest in the car.
A buyer doesn't arrive with buyer written across his forehead. He will quietly go in there and buy, or we wait, or get somebody else to do it for him, or whatever. There would have been a well-honed plan laid down.
It was demonstrated a few times. Sometimes there were a few late-night excursions to a private garage where the car was shipped in a trailer, so nobody knew. It was taken over to a garage, dropped off in a garage. A client whisked in, he inspected it with his experts, and then it was taken back and brought into our display before we opened up the next day, so nobody knew it was gone, and no one knew who was looking at it, because the potential bidders do not like the other bidders to know if they're interested in the car. So there's a lot of cloak and dagger going on there.
The big day dawned. The 17th of August 2002. Jim Spiro still hadn't made his intentions clear, not even to his friends.
Some things are hindsight, and you really don't know until after it happens, because before the auction, I kept on hearing Jim tell me about the history and everything about the car, and I'm like, wow, he really knows a lot about this car, but still had absolutely no idea that he was going to bid on it. And then all of a sudden we see him bidding on it, and we're going, whoa, now we understand. Now we see why he knows so much about this car.
I keep my cards close to my vest, but I went with some good friends, and I knew what was in my mind. And as I say, that an auction is an unpredictable thing. But I thought if there were an opportunity to get this car, I'd get it.
Bruce Barnett, please go to lot number 75. Your car's about to come in the lineup, and you probably have the keys. So.
He didn't tell us what he was going to do, so we sort of knew he was interested in some car, but there were several cars that were beautiful there. We really didn't think he was going to do it.
5,000. 5,000 a bid, thank you, 6,000. I got him to 5, 6, 6 a bid, thank you, 7.
American auctions are completely different to European auctions. It's a totally different style. On the whole, in American auctions, they're less sophisticated, if you like. It tends to be really just the buying and selling of cars, and it's not unusual to have an auction in America where you have 500 cars being offered for sale in one day, no catalogue. Even I, as an auctioneer, have difficulty in understanding what the American auctioneers are actually saying, because they'll be talking extremely quickly, saying a price, going up from the price that they're saying. They'll be saying 100, 100, 100, 120, 120, 120, but there's actually nobody bidding 120, so then they'll go back to 100, 100, 100, waiting for somebody to bid. You have all these, what they call sort of ring men pacing the floor, wearing black tuxedos and sneakers, waiting for some unfortunate soul to put his hand up and bid, and as soon as he does, he'll run over to the man bidding and tell him, bid more, bid more, bid more, it's a bargain. And you've got the vendor of the car sitting up on the ramp, crossing the ramp, with another member of the staff telling him, take the bid, it's the most money you'll ever get for the car. And it's a fascinating thing to see, and they do sell cars. It's not sophisticated, but it's very entertaining to watch. It's perhaps appropriate that it's held in a circus tent.
At 96,000, for the second time at 96,000, and the third and the last time now at $96,000. Are we all done? Gentlemen here.
They give you a prelude to the car. They show a tape which was very compelling. It's a tape of Phil Hill driving the car around, I think at Willow Springs, and your thoughts start racing. And then the lights dim, you hear the roar of the engine, the car rolls up on the block. I mean, it's theatrics at its best. And the car makes a very dramatic statement. You can smell the racing fuel. You see the driver who had so much history with this car 40 years hence step out of the car.
We have a ramp that every car comes up on. We dimmed the lights completely in the room, so the room was pitch black, and we ran a film on the car. And there was probably a 2-minute film of Phil Hill driving the car around the racetrack, and the sound was reverberating all around this theater, so it was spectacular. It got the crowd very excited. As the lights came up, a door opened, and Phil himself raced up in the car onto the stage at great speed, stopped it, and hopped out to a huge round of applause, standing ovation.
It's a great car and a very important car. We're delighted to be offering here today. Ladies and gentlemen.
And then the bidding starts, and you're on another. You know, the time is racing by. I can't tell you I can think of every thought as it occurred to me, but the excitement is there. I mean, it's an exciting process. If you've ever been to, I frankly think auctions are exciting. Period. I don't care what they're auctioning off. And obviously, at perhaps a higher dollar figure, the excitement gets more for me every time, whether I'm bidding on the thing or not. I just get a kick out of watching it.
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, please, not minding on now. Let's take the bidding on this important car. What do you say? It's $1 million now.
Leading up to the sale, we have our certain ideas on who we think are good, the people that we think are going to buy the car, and bid on the car. And in the sale itself, a whole host of different players were involved. The fellow that ended up buying the car, we knew he had an interest in it, but we did not know what his level was, and I was surprised that he went the distance.
When he started to bid, I mean, the entire room just roared up. It started, I think, somewhere in the $3 million or $3.5 million range, and there was a heated competition between another gentleman sitting on our left, sitting on our right, and then a gentleman on the phone on the left, and it was quite exciting to 3.5, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 3 point whatever.
The bidding process took a long time. There were a couple people in the room, and the underbidder was a gentleman who was actually out of the country and on the phone with one of our representatives in the room, and he was playing it very coy and not giving his bids out quickly and requiring a lot of cajoling by our representative, and so it took a long time. But the fellow who bought the car was pretty assertive in his bids. It was just the underbidder that was taking a long time.
Do I hear any advance? Race history on this car. He's nodding yes there, I see. No, he's nodding no.
I'm bidding. I don't know who else was involved bidding, but the numbers are ratcheting higher and higher and higher. And there's a part of you saying, "Hey, do I want to keep bidding higher?" That was an easy question for me to answer. And then the interesting thing was the auction got to a point where I guess it was just another bidder and I don't know who it was, but we were going up in increments, I think, of $50,000 at a shot. That's a meaningful amount of money, no question about it. And the last fellow was bidding, and then they came back to me, and I raised the bid to the what turned out to be the successful level, and they went back to the other fellow, and they tried to, I guess, cajole a higher bid out of him. I think my memory was it was a fellow on the phone, but I guess I was so excited I didn't know where it was coming from, but I knew there was somebody else out there bidding. And they kept trying to cajole another bid out of this fellow, which is that's what they're supposed to do. And I guess the guy was on the fence or whatever, and I kept wanting the auctioneer to hammer the thing sold.
Your car, sir. Your fun.
So eventually he did, and then you got to kind of check your senses, and then things sink in over time, and you're on cloud nine. You're excited. You get a bunch of people run up to you and say congratulations. People, all of a sudden, people you don't know come out of the woodwork. But at the end, when all of that settles down, at least for me, I was with my good close friends, my closest friends, and I had a chance to realize what had transpired. And after the auction was over, I guess they take the cars away and they put them in a security lot. And I remember to this day going down to that security lot with my good friends, two of whom are here, and looking at the car. And we kind of sat in it, took turns sitting in it, and looked at it, raised a fist in the air, and you realize, hey, I've done it, and everything, one of those once-in-a-lifetime things, everything worked out.
A month after the sale, the car finally arrived in New Orleans. For $6.5 million, the 1962 Le Mans winning Ferrari Testarossa was Jim Spiro's. A new home, a new owner, a new chapter had begun.
The car came off the truck, loaded it up. We had some fuel. We loaded it up with fuel, started it up. Great sound, let the car warm up, rev the idle a few times. Sends goosebumps through you. We hopped in the car, and we went to the same kind of dive that we're at now. And we did, I guess, I don't know, this bench racing, whatever you want to call it, for an hour. And it was great. And since then, driven the car on many occasions, and I'm going to keep driving the car because that's fun.
One thing that people ask me often is, what are people going to do with these cars? And how could you actually drive a car that is worth that much? Isn't it going to devalue it? It does not devalue them. These are objects that were created to be used. That's part of the fun of the object. I mean, if they were only static, I think they'd be worth a lot less. But you cannot drive a painting or a piece of jewelry, and you can drive a Ferrari, so you might as well.
You might as well turn to BBC 3 now if you fancy some comedy after all that high-octane fantasy. 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps on offer there. Or stay here on BBC 2 for Newsnight next.